On November 7th, 2015, Michael Shaver went with his family to meet up with some friends at a tractor show. This is the last time Michael Shaver is ever seen by anyone other than the woman that murdered him, Laurie Shaver. You've heard a lot of testimony and evidence over this last week discussing Facebook, phone records, bank records, all sorts of evidence for your consideration. But it's important to remember that why we are here is because Michael Shaver was shot in the back of his head without any sort of legal excuse or justification and buried in his backyard. Michael Shaver, between November 7th and November 10th, was shot in the back of the head and dumped, wrapped in a tarp, in his backyard. That's what we've been here this week. That is what the evidence has shown you, and it has shown that the person who did that is Laurie Shaver. The elements of second-degree murder are fairly simple, and it is these elements that the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You can have doubt in this case. You can have doubt in any criminal case. The state's burden is to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. These three elements, and that is what we must prove to you. First, Michael Shaver is dead. 2, the death was caused by the criminal act of Laurie Shaver. 3, there was an unlawful killing of Michael Shaver by an act imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. That third element is further defined by the court as an action that is reasonably likely to kill. A gun to the back of the head is obviously something reasonably likely to kill. Done with ill will, hatred, and spite. I can think of no other reason in a person's mind when they're shooting someone in the back of the head other than those three things. And 3, indicates an indifference to human life. The evidence that you have heard throughout this trial clearly show that that first element and the third element are really just not in dispute. What we are going to spend the majority of time talking about this afternoon is whether or not the death was caused by a criminal act of Laurie Shaver. And the evidence that you have heard shows that the state has met its burden for that element. As you heard the judge give you the instructions already, there is something that is called a lesser included offense to this second-degree murder, and that is manslaughter. The difference between manslaughter and the second-degree murder is it does not have that third element about an act done imminently dangerous, demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. So if you feel that the state has proven that Laurie Shaver is in fact the one that shot but didn't have that state of mind at the time she shot him in the back of the head, manslaughter would be the offense that the state has proven in this case. As we go through the evidence, I want to remind you of something that Mr. Wiggs said in his opening statement. And what said in opening statement is it's not evidence. If you've heard some things in opening statement that was going to be presented to you when it came out differently, what you heard from that stand, what you got from the evidence sitting on that table over there, that's what you are to consider, not what the attorneys talked about in opening. But what Mr. Wiggs said is you aren't going to hear just find her guilty because common sense. But the instructions that the judge gives you, and the judge will give you a full written packet of all of these instructions, so you don't have to worry about writing down the various instructions as we're talking about them. The judge will give that to you. It is up to you to decide what evidence is reliable. You should use your common sense in deciding which is the best evidence and which evidence should not be relied upon in considering your verdict. So common sense is absolutely part of the instructions the judge is giving you and absolutely part of what you should use when you are weighing the credibility of the evidence, the witnesses that have testified from both sides. The state has proven this case through the totality of the circumstances of this entire investigation. It is important to remember that Laurie Shaver is the only one that stood any sort of benefit to gain by the death of her husband. She had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to do this. And when I talk about the means, the gun that was recovered from Robert Seha that he purchased from Laurie Shaver prior to the body being discovered is the same caliber and class as the projectile found in Michael Shaver's skull. And remember the testimony of Megan Cleek, the firearms investigator from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that did that analysis. Once again, I'm going to trust that you remember what she said as opposed to what the attorneys say about it. But what she said was the projectile that was found in the skull was the same caliber, meaning that it was the right size ammunition to be fired from that pink and black .38 special. She also said that it had all of the class characteristics from that type of firearm. The only thing she said it was missing in order to make a full comparison and the thing that she would need in order to say, in fact, it was that gun, is it didn't have enough evidence of the individual characteristics from that firearm. You saw the condition of that projectile, how smushed it got once it struck the inside of the skull. You also heard her say, when she did the test fires with that weapon in the most pristine situation she possibly could, firing into that water tank, the individual characteristics that were left on those pristine projectiles were very hard to see. So between the time frame, the degradation, and the fact that this gun does not leave strong individual characteristics, it's completely understandable why 4 years later, when it's examined, they just can't find it. But all of the evidence that is in that projectile is consistent with being fired from that weapon. Motive. We actually heard evidence of a couple different motives, because it is clear that she wanted to be with Jeremy Townsend. We are going to talk much more at length about the Facebook activity, the flowers, the messages sent to Vanessa Townsend, but she wanted out and she wanted to be with her new boyfriend. But you also heard her say, when Frank Merritt came to check on the whereabouts of Michael Shaver, when she claimed that he, in the middle of the night, got into a black SUV, abandoned all of his property, his vehicle, his clothes, anything that had any sort of value, and hauled up to Georgia, that she and Michael had had a fight because she found the fact that his previous girlfriend, Kendall Davidowski's phone number was still in his phone. Motive is not something the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. It is not one of those elements. But we have presented you evidence of what her motives would be in this case. And finally, opportunity. That means, was this person in a position to commit this crime? I believe Detective Dale summarized it best when she said, the body was found buried in the backyard. It's not like he got carjacked and shot on I-Drive. All three of those factors point in the direction of Laurie Shaver. So now let's talk and focus on the totality of circumstances. That goes to all of that on that table, all the things that have been presented to you, showing how she hijacked his Facebook, showing how she impersonated him to his friends and family members through texts, Facebook messages, took all the efforts she possibly could to avoid anyone from starting to look. Now, you have heard various friends and family members talk about how over the course of 2.5, 3 years, they went looking for Michael. It wasn't a scenario where he talked to anybody on a daily basis, weekly basis. There were times that he would go and not visit and things of that. But he always responded. When people would reach out to him, he would respond. He wouldn't leave those messages unanswered. And when they did get any response after November 2015, every single person that talked to you about that said it was obviously different. It was not the way he would respond. Finally, when taking all of the circumstances, all of the evidence, and putting it all together, that's where the state is asking you to rely on your common sense. Because you can take any one piece of this puzzle and you can look at that and you can say, well, I mean, that's not an eyewitness that saw what happened. That's not a piece of DNA. Maybe that's not something that proves in and of itself that Laurie Shaver committed this murder. And we're not saying any one piece of evidence over there does that. We never have. We got up here, Mr. Buxman in opening was straightforward with what you were going to see. He told you there's not going to be a witness that's going to say Laurie Shaver did this, that I saw her do this. He told you what the forensic evidence was going to be. We put that up there so you could see it. But we also gave you the explanation of why, after someone is buried in the ground over multiple years and their body decomposes, the effects that has on any sort of trace DNA evidence, any sort of trace fingerprint evidence. But we were upfront about that with you. We told you that's how it was going to be. But we are asking you to follow that judge's instruction and use your common sense in looking at all of this together. Because when you look at it all together, the conclusion is crystal clear. Let's start going through the timeline. November 7th, 2015 is the last time Michael Shaver is seen by any friends, family members, co-workers, anyone other than Laurie Shaver. November 9th, 2015, after Frank Merritt had reached out first to Michael the day before, text about a gun cleaning kit, did not get any response. He followed up with that, and Michael says, well, I put air quotes, Michael says to Frank Merritt, have to quit my job to work on my marriage. Submit to you, someone going and becoming unemployed and not earning any money probably isn't the best way to go about working on and contributing to the marriage. But that's the first type of response that people thought was odd. November 10th, 2015 was the first time ever that Michael Shaver did not show to work and did not call to say he was not coming in. This continues to November 12th, 2015, and ultimately leads to his termination. November 11th, from those Facebook records, the Laurie Shaver Facebook records, Laurie Shaver posts a public posting to the entire world wishing various veterans a happy Veterans Day. most importantly in that list of people that she thanks is her brave, loving man. Michael Shaver was never in the military. Her husband was never in the military. Jeremy Townsend was. One day after Michael Shaver has no contact with his place of employment, she is publicly posting for all the world to see, talking about her brave, loving man, veteran, Jeremy Townsend. November 12th, 2015, John Borglum receives a text message from Mike's phone that's saying he has issues at home and was in Georgia, so go ahead and fire him. Now remember, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that he was ever in Georgia. None of his bank records show any activity up there. His family members in Georgia, they haven't seen him. And Mike just leaves his job, his vehicle, everything behind. November 13th, 2015, because this is all extremely unusual, Frank Merritt goes to the Shaver residence to check in on Mike and is told he went to Georgia. Now, when Laurie testified yesterday, she tried to say, oh no, he must have misunderstood. I never said Georgia, definitely. That's just a misunderstanding. But remember, he's not the only one to say he got a message about Mike going to Georgia. Because John Borglum the day before, in that text message sent from Michael Shaver's phone, and whoever had that said he went to Georgia. Laurie's version of what happened in November. She kicks Michael Shaver out after the November 7th, 2015 tractor show, and he returns to live at the airplane hangar. So now the story has changed from he went in a black SUV, went out in the middle of the night to go up to Georgia, to he is living at the airplane hangar. If that is true, you need to believe all of the following. One, despite the fact that the last time he was out of the home and living at the hangar, he was still working at Disney, he somehow decides to abandon his source of income. He's kicked out of the home. He's obviously going to need a place to stay. He's going to have to pay for bills, pay for food. But that's the period of time he decides, I'm not coming to work anymore. You also have to believe that he decided to just abandon his vehicle, his source of transportation, his source of actually maybe finding another job, being able to go various places. You also have to believe that he leaves behind anything he has that has any sort of value. Guns, tools at Disney, anything. Now he's unemployed, homeless, gonna need to fend for himself, but he just leaves all of that behind. And then you heard also today from Katina, they left all of his belongings, toiletries, and clothing behind at the house. So you basically have to believe, if you believe Laurie Shaver's version as she told you yesterday, all of those things would have to be true. So what's the evidence that that's not true? Well, the person that she indicated took him to Georgia came in and said, nope, I didn't do that. All of his family members that live in Georgia, no, we never saw him. All of the bank activity is here in Claremont by the home that he lived in with Laurie. The bank activity is not even out by the hangars. There's one entry that deals with Disney, but every ATM withdrawal, Groveland, Claremont, 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 was not in Georgia. No outgoing phone activity after November 7th, 2015. None. And then, if he is kicked out of the home, fending for himself, there is absolutely no reason for him to just also cut off contact with friends, family, and coworkers. But that's exactly what happened. Michael Shaver was dead before November 10th, 2015, because he fell off the face of the earth. There is no bank, phone, any activity that is associated in this day and age with what people need to do in order to survive, because he's dead. These are the various records that you heard about, that you saw. Everything is in those folders so you can review it. But this is what I am talking about the bank activity from the time he was killed, before November 10th, 2015, and then December 30th, when that account just becomes overdrawn and is never used again. November 20th, online purchase to wish.com. November 24th, online purchase to wish.com. 12/14, ATM deposit. What was that deposit? That was the check that was mailed to his home from Mariner Finance. And this is important because this check was sent to the place where she lives. And it was deposited in Claremont. Michael Shaver does not have a vehicle. I think Laurie was trying to explain to you how, well, he would just come by, no one would see him, no one would know anything, but he would just check his mail because it was out by the street. That makes no sense. He has no car, he has no money, no phone, but he's coming by to check his mail and get this check? No. That's just not credible. That's not believable. He then, after he makes this deposit, ATM withdrawal Bailey, 12/14, ATM withdrawal Claremont, 12/18, ATM withdrawal Claremont, 12/21, ATM withdrawal Groveland, 12/21, ATM withdrawal Claremont, 12/23, purchase from Walmart.com. Who was the purchaser there? She was. You saw the receipts. You saw the Walmart.com records. You saw it went to that address. Finally, 12/23, ATM withdrawal Claremont. And at that point, on the 30th, the account becomes overdrawn, never used again. Mike is walking around, having no contact with friends, family members between November and May. We're just getting his money. His bank account is cashed out, absolutely no activity. There's no reason, if he's out trying to forage for himself now, kicked out of the home, living at the hangar, and he doesn't maintain his bank records, bank accounts. But it is depleted by Laurie, because all of that activity is Claremont and Groveland. Phones. This is Michael Shaver's phone records. This is the number that he had. This is the number that you heard his friend Brendan Burns actually pull out his phone, say, I still have his phone number programmed in my phone. This is what it is. This is that 5121 number. And once again, all of these records are in those folders. You can look at them yourself. Obviously, you can't read all the detail here. But the point of putting this up was to show you that this one in blue is that phone call he made out on the 7th to Epcot. That was the Detective Dale told you that was the last outgoing call from this phone number. It research, that phone number was associated with a landline in Epcot, where he worked. Before that, this is all the activity. Almost daily, calls out, calls in, calls out, calls in. This first area, all those yellow highlighted, are calls back and forth between him and Laurie Shaver. After November 7th, nothing. Not a single call out from his phone. He doesn't have a car. He doesn't have a job. He's not at the hangar. None of his friends there have seen him. He's got to communicate with somebody if he's alive in order to keep going. But there's no activity because he's not alive, because Laurie Shaver killed him before November 10th, 2015. The only phone record after November 7th, 2015 is the collections call from Mariner, because the check that was mailed to her was deposited in Claremont, and they were coming to collect. And when they called, remember what Tara Mitchell told you. A female answered the phone and said, "Oh, this is a new number." But we know that's not true, because you have all the phone records showing the history of that phone number, and how it changed. And we'll come back to that. So let's keep going with the timeline. In December of 2015, Mike's mother becomes ill. His family is seeking him out to let him know that she is very sick. I believe the testimony from Stacy Turner was it looked like she might not make it. Couldn't get in touch with him. All the texts, phone, Facebook, whatever they tried, couldn't find him. He's dead. But they did get in touch with Laurie. And she said, "I'll get word to him." No phone calls to him. She knew she didn't have to call him. She knew he was dead, because she killed him. March 24th, 2016, Laurie Shaver posts about the fire pit that she made. This is the area that multiple witnesses told you was a hole, was going to be a duck pond. But now in March 2014, that area is filled in. And wouldn't you know it, Michael Shaver's right there. He's in that. Isabel described it as a really big hole. April 6, 2016. This is where we start showing you how we know Laurie Shaver had Michael Shaver's phone and access to the ability to text people, had access to his Facebook, had access to everything she needed to do to keep people from starting to look for him, to keep people from investigating the fact that she killed her husband and buried him in the backyard. That phone number, 352-431-5121, on April 6, 2016, this would be approximately 4.5 months since Laurie said, "I kicked him out." But that phone number gets changed. Saw those records, Vice brought in, changed phone number to 352-801-0941. And then 10 days later, that phone number is changed again to 352-431-8444. As a reminder, the phone numbers that were important in this case started off with the 431-5121 number, the one we just talked about, how it got changed 2 times within the period of 15 days. We know that was Mike's number. The records are connected with Laurie Shaver as the subscriber. We also heard Brendan Burns testify. That was the phone number I've had programmed in my phone since the last time I ever talked to my friend. Laurie Shaver's phone is 352-431-0419. We have her phone records. We have the screenshot from the time frame that Vanessa Townsend had reached out to Laurie to discuss the messages that she had received. We also had the screenshots from the text messages between Jeremy Townsend and Laurie Shaver, and lo and behold, the phone number associated with Laurie Shaver in those text messages is this 431-0419 number. Now, Laurie testified yesterday and doesn't seem to remember any phone numbers that she's ever had, but the records show it, the screenshots show it, the text messages show that was her number at the time. And then there's a folder, and as opposed to the call details and said this is the call out, this is the call in, that third folder we talked about with Tanner Gale shows the history of that phone number and device. And it shows how on April 6th, the phone number was changed from Mike's original number to the 0941 number. Why is that important? Well, 2 days later, after changing Michael Shaver's phone number to a new number, she reaches out through Facebook to contact Vanessa Townsend and says, here is my number, call me. Vanessa Townsend goes to call that number at one point. Remember what she said. I called this person and asked me to call them. They wouldn't answer, but they would text. Laurie can't answer the phone and pretend she's Mike anymore. She has to text. Well, that number only stays in place for 10 days. She got it. She did what she needed with it. Got rid of that number, got a new number. What number was that? 352-431-8444. Why is that important? Well, in July, she's filing a court document with her address and her phone number, 352-431-8444. This shows that she had the original Mike Shaver phone and phone number this entire time. This shows the constant link between when she killed him in November, had his device, had the number changed to contact Vanessa, and then had it changed again to the number that she represented as hers. April 6, 2016. Laurie Shaver's bank records reflect the purchase of flowers sent to Vanessa Townsend. April 9th, Michael Shaver's Facebook sends Vanessa Townsend, that's when she asked him to contact her at the 0941, the burner phone. And April 11th, 2016, Michael Shaver Facebook sends a message informing Vanessa she's about to get a special delivery. And she does. The flowers purchased by Laurie Shaver, as shown in her bank records. She receives the flowers, exposing the affair, but that's not all she ultimately gets from Laurie via the Mike Shaver's Facebook. She gets pictures after picture after picture, text message, screenshot after screenshot after screenshot. I ask you once again to use your common sense. This is Mike Shaver reaching out to inform some other person that their husband was being involved in an affair. Wouldn't this be enough? Wouldn't this picture do it? some other person's wife that their partners were having an affair. This is sent by Laurie Shaver because she wanted to drive a wedge because Jeremy would not leave Vanessa, and that is what she wanted. September 12th through the 14th of 2016, the cement slab is poured over Michael Shaver's body. That is shown to you by the cement mixer rental being for that period, and then it is also confirmed in Facebook posts a couple days later at Isabel's birthday party on September 19th, 2016. Michael Shaver's body has been in the ground for some time now, but there is no argument that can be made that after that cement slab is put down, that his body was not there. On September 20th, 2016, after we know for a fact Michael Shaver has to be dead, there is a Facebook message to his niece, and this is the one that reached out to him and said, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" He said, "I don't know you. I don't know who you are." Because she didn't have the Shaver last name. Laurie didn't recognize him. She's like, "I'm your niece." She talked about how she had discussions with him. Mike knew she was getting married, knew that she was going to be changing her name. And Michael Shaver's Facebook reply is, "I don't have a family anymore. I have no clue who you are. Now stop messaging." September 20th, 2016, after we know Mike has to be underneath that cement slab, he also sends a Facebook message to Vanessa Townsend. "Hi, Vanessa, how are you? Moving good looks good on you. Hope you and your son are doing well." Now, Mr. Wiggs has talked at length with various witnesses about maybe Jeremy Townsend had this phone. Maybe he was just driving up to the house for months and months and months after this relationship was ending to try to get into the router to have the IP address match Laurie Shaver's IP address, and that he was the one that was doing all this. No reason for Jeremy Townsend to send this message to Vanessa, because it's not true. It's just as unreasonable as the idea of some sort of hacker getting into Michael Shaver's Facebook account to post a stupid meme. It makes no sense because it's not true. Laurie Shaver had access to it. Laurie Shaver had access to the devices. Laurie Shaver had the means and desire to make people not want to come look because she killed them. March 8th, 2017, after we know Michael has been dead for a very long time now, and known that he is underneath that cement slab, the Facebook profile picture is changed to a photo taken by Brendan Burns in 2014 that he says probably texted to him back then. So who would have access to that to put it up on his Facebook profile to try to act like Michael Shaver was still alive? Someone that has his phone. Who had his phone? She did. And those phone records prove it. January 1st, 2018, that is when Michael Shaver's Facebook profile is changed to the random bar picture that Detective Strickland did research into using the reverse Google image to show that had something to do with some sort of Bloody Mary company out in the Midwest, and Michael Shaver's nowhere in that photo. March 14th, 2017 is when the cover photo changed. And that was that odd-looking revolver that I think had 700 bullets in it that Detective Strickland made a joke about that's not a real gun. Well, it's important to remember that the post of that cover photo and almost the 2-year anniversary of Michael Shaver's death, to put a gun after he was shot in the back of the head, shows that Laurie Shaver's Facebook account and Michael Shaver's Facebook account utilized that same IP address, meaning that they have to be in the same location, the devices that are accessing these accounts. It's the same, whether it's Starbucks, whether it's Laurie Shaver's home, it doesn't matter. It is in the same IP, the same location. Both of those accounts are accessed within 1 minute of each other. Has to be someone that has control of both accounts. There's no other reasonable explanation for that. The Facebook IP logs. We spent a lot of time talking about these. This is a summary that Detective Strickland described. And going through this, you can see how there is activity throughout a 2-year period where both of these Facebook accounts are utilizing the same IP address. Once again, we've been upfront with you since the moment we started talking about this case that we are not going to be able to tell you the physical address of that IP address. But it doesn't matter. Wherever it is, you have to be in the same location to access the IP. And when both accounts are constantly utilizing the same IP address, that shows that is the same location, the same person accessing that. If you were to go through this and go through all 70 some odd pages, you would see there are 13 separate IP addresses that both accounts utilize over the course of that period. And you heard some testimony about how providers like CenturyLink will sometimes roll that, change your personal IP address to your home every month, maybe every 2 months. What you will see is that both devices utilize a particular IP address for about a month, maybe 45 days. And then it changes to another IP address. And then both of those devices share that IP address for that entire time. There's countless instances in there where you might see the Michael Shaver Facebook address, Facebook account access an IP address, and then the next day, Laurie Shaver's Facebook account accesses that same IP address, and it goes back and forth, back and forth. That is a folder full of those examples. But if you were to go through there, you would not only would you find 13 separate IP addresses that they use, you will see activity on Michael Shaver's Facebook account that continues after the cement slab is laid over his body in September of 2016. You will see there are 31 separate days in that 2-year period where they both access the same IP address on the same day. You will see that there are 12 days in there where there is activity between the Laurie Shaver account and the Michael Shaver account within 2 hours of each other. There is one instance, which we talked about with the gun photo on the almost 2-year anniversary of his murder, that is 1 minute and 7 seconds apart. There's another instance on July 15th, 2016, where the activity is within 6 minutes of each other. This is the same person looking at these, using these. This is one example of the type of thing you'll see in this chart. This is from April 2016 on this side, where you can see there are some days, once again, look through this chart, feel free to do so, towards the end of that chart, this is where you can see the actual data that I've been talking about, showing the 1 minute. And not only have we given you this summary to try to help you with going through all this information, you have the originals right there, and you could go through it yourself. And you can check it and look at all of that. Justifiable and excusable homicide. Justifiable homicide is going to be the self-defense, defense of others that we will talk about shortly. The excusable homicide instruction is given to you. You've heard it, read it. I would submit to you that none of these things apply when the killing is committed by accident and misfortune in doing a lawful act. There's absolutely no evidence of any of that. Accident and misfortune in the heat of passion. Heat of passion is coming in and being so overwhelmed by something that a reasonable person would not act any different. Not to be blunt, but you come in and you see your child being attacked, molested, whatever it may be, and you are overcome with this emotion, and no reasonable person would not. That actually doesn't excuse the killing. It just means that you don't have the necessary intent to commit second-degree murder or first-degree murder. It would be a manslaughter. And when the killing is committed by accident and misfortune resulting from sudden combat, if a dangerous weapon is not used. Well, we know someone was shot in the back of the head. That doesn't apply. Excusable homicide has to be given in every homicide, but none of those apply. Before we talk about the defense of others, I want to go through and talk about the tools the judge has given you to aid in your common sense in weighing the credibility and weighing the evidence in this case. Did the witness seem to have an opportunity to see and know the things about which the witness testified? Did they have an accurate memory? Were they straightforward in answering the attorney's questions? I'd submit to you that as you go through this, all of these questions that you ask yourself are pretty common sense, that these are the types of things you should use to try to assess a witness's credibility. Defense of others. The testimony that has been presented to you by the defense is that Isabel shot her dad in the back of the head. And then, just so happened, at that exact same moment, that Jeremy Townsend showed up, grabbed the gun, shot him again, and then threatened to kill Isabel and Aiden if anybody said something. They also say, both Laurie Shaver and Isabel Shaver, that Laurie took them her kids to school, that Aiden had no idea anything that had been going on. Gunshot in the back porch, huge fight. Isabel said Jeremy threatened him and threatened to kill him. But Laurie said Aiden had no idea what was going on. I just needed to get them to school, and it was a short trip over to school. All I wanted to do is get them to school and then get back home. That's what she said. And she says when she got back, Laurie said when Jeremy got back, Jeremy was gone, and there was no change in the property. She talked about how close this school was to her. All she did was take the kids to school and drive right back, yet somehow Jeremy was able to clean up the entire scene, remove the body, and I guess come back some other day undetected and bury it, and no one noticed disturbed ground anywhere? These rules of weighing the evidence and assessing credibility, the judge has told you specifically, since the defendant has testified, you are to use those same questions, those same tools in order to assess her credibility. And when you look at this story, it makes no sense because it's just not true. Now, ultimately, proving this case is the state's We have to prove she was the one that killed him. They don't have to prove to you it was self-defense or defense motive. We have to prove to you it wasn't. And we have, because all of the evidence shows that Michael Shaver was not alive in November, was not alive when this happened, because he's been dead since November of 2015. Somehow, Isabel, who shot her dad in the back of the head and went to school when she was 7 years old, has absolutely no memory of what year or what month this happened in. What grade were you in? I don't remember. I don't know. What month was it? I don't know. I think spring or summer. What year? No clue. And she said she went to school that day and carried on like nothing happened. It's the state's burden to prove this case. But if you are fed a story that is just patently false and fails all common sense scrutiny, ask yourself, why? Why did they come up here and try to feed that to you? Because to cover up the reality that Laurie Shaver killed her husband back in November. And they're trying to give you a story, and they're trying to fit it in to the timeline that has been established over the course of this case. Because also remember, in the very beginning, when Laurie Shaver was arrested, you heard testimony that her attorney said, you need to look into two people. You really need to look at these people. Jeremy Townsend and James Ballou. Okay? Well, if this is the story back when Laurie was arrested in 2020, why bring James Ballou into this? That's not part of their tale. That has nothing to do with it. But that's how the story started. And then as the evidence progressed, that in 2022, Isabel shows up as this potential witness. And despite what Mr. Wiggs told you in the very beginning, that we were offering the truth to the state, and they shut the door on us. They said, we don't want to hear it. They want to talk to her. But you heard from her attorney. What does she tell you? Every time after she became the attorney of this witness, I would see her and, hey, anytime your client wants to come and talk, I'm here. Does that sound like the state shutting the door on his theory? Or is that just the convenient tale they want to tell? And we went through Laurie's Facebook because it has been 9 years since this happened. The person, Isabel, that you saw testify is a much different person than the little girl she was when she says she shot her dad. These are the pictures of Isabel from back when she says she shot her dad in the back of the head. Went to school, carried on like nothing happened. And then this great, wonderful mother that Isabel described, who was saying that these two were involved in this horribly traumatic incident in 2016. She go get her therapy, counseling. Maybe she needs to talk to somebody about the fact she shot her dad in the back of her head and was threatened by her mom's boyfriend. No, one time this year, I saw a counselor and talked to somebody. I'm fine. No big deal. The story makes no sense because it isn't true. But the evidence completely disputes their tale. Dr. Coberly told you that this is a single gunshot to the back of the head. Isabel told you, I shot my dad in the back of the head. He sat there, he started shaking, he started seizing. And then they said Jeremy came up and shot again. There's no damage other than post-mortem rib breakings from after the body was buried in the backyard for years. Also makes absolutely no sense that if someone was coming in to finish someone off, give them a coup de grace shot with a gun, if they want to put another shot in the head, that they would shoot him in some soft, fleshy area so as to not hit any bones. But this injury, Dr. Coberly looked at underneath a microscope, and she says there is no doubt that is one gunshot. Because even when you have a scenario where somebody takes the gun, pulls the trigger, and immediately pulls the trigger again in that exact same spot, there's going to be derivations, there's going to be enough movement that they can see kind of a figure eight type of movement, figure eight type of configuration, to show that there was more than one shot. There's also only one projectile in the skull. Probably didn't even need that explanation of the microscopic examination because there's only one bullet there. But scientifically, we know Michael was shot one time. Going back into those tests, going to those questions. Does the witness have some interest in how this case should be decided? Laurie Shaver, Travis Filmer, and Isabel Shaver are the only witnesses in this case that had an interest in how this case should be decided. Isabel Shaver said, I love my mom, I don't want to see anything bad happen to her, I want to keep my family together. And I understand that. But that doesn't mean what she told you is true. Was the witness honest and straightforward in answering the attorney's questions? I want you to think about Travis Filmer and target his discussion of this commitment ceremony on December 31st, 2016. Nobody thought this was a wedding. We didn't represent this as a wedding. Was she wearing a wedding dress? Yeah. Was she walked down the aisle by your grandfather? Yes. Was there someone there conducting the entire ceremony? Yes. Her testimony from other people, well, they absolutely told us it was a wedding. You also saw the Facebook post that Laurie put up announcing their engagement, saying that I'm going to be a filmer. Now, is that in and of itself the big earth-shattering aha moment? No. But if you can't trust them on the little things, how on earth are you going to trust them on the big things? Laurie Shaver, as far as honest and straightforward in answering the attorney's questions, you got to see the way she testified, you got to see her temperament, you got to see all of that. But also, once again, the little things. Was this your phone number? I don't know. That's the types of tools you can use in assessing their credibility. Does the witness testimony agree with other testimony and other evidence in this case? Everything except for Laurie Shaver and Isabel Shaver show you and tell you Michael Shaver has been dead since November of 2015. And if he's dead in November of 2015, he definitely isn't showing up unannounced 6 months later for the first time on their porch. I guess wearing his nothing but his shorts, socks, and underwear, because that's how the body was found in the ground. Is that somebody that just shows up unannounced and starts a fight? Or is that somebody that was at home, asleep, in that bed, when he was shot in the back of the head? Even Laurie Shaver and Isabel Shaver's testimony conflicts with each other. Isabel Shaver said her father had not been living at home since 2014, since that DV arrest in 2014. arrangement as other witnesses that you've heard from, where she says, no, he was living there. But Isabel, now Dad hadn't been there since September of 2014. Also, Isabel says, Jeremy said he was going to kill me and my brother. Laurie says, Jeremy said, if you tell anyone, DCF will come and take you away from the family. Their stories don't even match, because it's fabricated, it's made up, it's flat out not true, and it's inconsistent with everything else that you have heard. The only witness that Laurie got up there and say wasn't fabricating something was her daughter. Scott Amatuccio. He's lying that he's actually friends with Mike. They weren't really friends. You heard from Katina. She's like, oh no, they were great friends. Frank Merritt. He's lying. I never told him Mike went to Georgia. Jeremy Townsend. All sorts of lies. He would spend the night. He would be that right there should be a huge red flag to you. If Jeremy Townsend was out spending the night at someone else's home 3-4 times a week, the way Laurie and Isabel tried to tell you, Vanessa would know. She wouldn't need someone to send her flowers with a card to expose an affair. Vanessa had no clue that anything was going on, because Jeremy would go over in the middle of the day the way he told you. Robert Mercado is not being truthful when he said that Laurie got upset one day and was threatening people with a gun. Austin Filmer is not telling the truth when he said that he went over there and helped Travis lay down this concrete slab. Vanessa Townsend obviously is lying, because she said there was never any time that Jeremy was missing at night. He always came home. He was always living at home. John Borglum apparently is lying about the reason why he terminated Mike Shaver, because Laurie got up there and said no, he was fired because of a sexual harassment claim. So also, I guess Disney's lying when they sent over all of Mike Shaver's work records and just hid any sort of sexual harassment claim against him. But today you actually heard the truth about that sexual harassment claim, and nothing to do with Michael. She called it in against Kendall Davidowski, the woman that Mike Shaver was dating when they were separate. Kendall got up there and said, yeah, I worked at Disney. Laurie Shaver called in and made a complaint about the relationship I had with Mike Shaver. So everyone is lying about Laurie, but Laurie is the only witness that you heard from that actually admits lying to other people. She admits lying to law enforcement. She admits that when they came and said, do you know what happened to your husband? She said, I don't know. That was a lie. She knows he was dead. She tries to say, I had no idea he was buried in the property. No idea that he was under this cement slab she poured. But as far as anything that happened to him, no clue. She admits lying to Rabin, her former boss, about the fact that after Michael Shaver was dead in November, she told her former boss, oh, he's in jail somewhere for failing to pay child support and his driver's license suspended. She admit that was a lie. She lies to her son, Aiden, because she says, after I saw Mike killed in the fashion they try to say it happened, she told her son that her dad went away and went to jail. Even if you're trying to cover this up and trying to tell something to the son, why say your father went to jail? That's spite. That's absolute spite on this man that she killed. And then Katina Vasquez, who testified today that this whole thing you heard about in 2014, how this is just so indicative of what happens in the household and how she was abused by Michael and all of these things. What did Katina tell you? Laurie told me that was a lie. Mike should have never been arrested for that. I was the aggressor. I threw the vase. I broke the slide glass doors. I hit him with the gun. Mike can't get up here and speak for himself and defend himself, but he doesn't have to. Because people like Katina come up and tell you the truth about Laurie's lives. Did the witness at some other time make a statement that is inconsistent with the testimony they gave in court? Tammy Dale talking to Isabel. Do you know what happened to him, your dad? Isabel, I have no clue. I don't know, he just left. At the CAC, so you did not see anything that happened that would have made you have an idea of what happened to him? Isabel, no. The last time she remembered seeing him.
Is there an objection, sir?
Yeah.
Sidebar, please.
Just remember what Isabel was testifying about. I asked her, did you tell this to Tammy Dale? Did you tell this to CNC? She admitted, I told these inconsistencies that are completely different from what she testified. Now, I will also submit to you that back when Laurie Shaver was first arrested is when these statements were made. And this, I don't know, he just left, is consistent with what Laurie Shaver told every other person that came looking. In 2020, I believe the evidence is completely clear that Isabel had no idea what happened. The only thing she knew is what her mom told her, and that's that he just left. And that this story was fabricated. Travis Filmer states in depo that the reason Laurie did not want a legal wedding was due to financial issues. Yet at trial, he said she didn't want a legal wedding because, quote, she did not want to sign a contract with another man. And he started talking about, oh, poor Laurie and the things that had happened to her. But when he was actually presented with that depot transcript and given an opportunity to show me where he had said any of that before, he couldn't, because he didn't say it, because it wasn't true. And also, this whole thing about not wanting to sign a contract with another man, we know that's not true because they ultimately got married once they legally could. Once it was discovered that her ex-husband was in fact dead, they got married, and you heard testimony about that. So all of that, not true, completely inconsistent. Travis Filmer states to Robert Proper and law enforcement, but Laurie said it's not that the victim is missing, it's that he is no longer walking this earth. And he just flat out denied it. But his friend, mentor, Robert Proper, and his twin brother, who said he overheard that comment to law enforcement, came in to verify it did. Then Travis Filmer had told his brother, Austin, that there were times that Laurie would get his phone, send texts to Austin, basically posing as Travis. I asked him, had you ever said that before? He said, no, that's never happened, no. Austin, his twin brother, came in and said, that absolutely has happened, and he's absolutely talking to me. And I could tell because we're twins. The way we communicate was completely different from the way she was communicating with me there. Which is the same thing you've heard from every friend and family member that received texts and Facebook messages from Laurie Shaver, posing as Michael Shaver, since his death in November. Brings us to count 2, the accessory after the fact. The judge has read you the law on this. I'm actually going to hold off in talking about this charge a little bit until after Mr. Wiggs has talked to you. I will tell you that a person cannot be guilty of the murder and as an accessory after the fact to that murder. Accessory means they were helping another person. The evidence we have presented to you proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Laurie Shaver committed second-degree murder. And because of that, the verdict should be guilty of murder in the second degree using a firearm and not guilty of accessory after the fact, because you can't be guilty of both. But the law does allow the state to present these alternate theories depending on how the jury perceives the evidence to make that final conclusion. But I will tell you that the evidence that has been presented is not that in May of 2016, Jeremy Townsend shot this man in the back of the head, and Laurie had efforts to help cover that up. It's that Laurie killed him in November of 2015, and she, in order to prevent investigation into her own crimes, covered that up. The evidence of the cover-up is still showing you evidence that she is in fact the murderer. Comes back to that common sense. We've been talking all week about a lot of different things and a lot of different evidence, and what I've been trying to do here is put it together in such a way to kind of condense and show you how the bank records and the Facebook records all fit together. It's up to you to decide what's reliable, and you should use your common sense in deciding that. The totality of the circumstances show you that everything points to Laurie Shaver. She had the motive, the means, the opportunity. Mike is buried in her backyard. She's the one that installs the fire pit and puts the cement slab over his body. She lied to friends, family, and law enforcement about his whereabouts for years. There was no attempts to call Michael after 2015. She depleted his bank account. She sold his property. She posed as Michael through Facebook and his phone. Everything points to her. All the evidence points to her because she is guilty of murder in the second degree. The verdict form that you are going to be presented is not as simple as just guilty or not guilty. We talked about manslaughter being a lesser included, so that is on here as well. judge will instruct you that you are to find the defendant guilty of the highest level offense that has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So I would submit to you as you start your deliberations to start with the murder and go through those elements. Because if the murder is proven, manslaughter is obviously included, so that's proven as well. And you don't have to go to manslaughter if you all agree that the murder has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But there's also a couple questions here for you that you will also have to decide that deal with the use of a firearm. And that is crystal clear. There's a bullet in his head, a bullet hole in the back of his skull, but the law requires that you actually designate, yes, she was in actual possession, meaning that she had it in her hand when she shot Michael Shaver in the back of the head. She discharged the firearm and it caused great bodily harm or death. The state has presented to you evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that this was not self-defense. It was not defense of others, but it was murder in the second degree. And therefore, the verdict consistent with the law and the evidence is that she's guilty of second-degree murder, and that all three of those questions should be answered yes. Mr. Wiggs will be up here and talk about what he believes the evidence has shown to you, and I'll just remind you what the judge said, what the lawyers say is not evidence. You're to rely on your own memory of that evidence and what things were presented. So if either myself or Mr. Wiggs are saying something and you're like, that's not what I remember, you go back to your notes and you look and you make sure what you're being told is valid and it's actually what was presented to you today, this week. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Canocchio.